Okay. Let's check if we're live. I'm just going to double check that we are live. Um, um, just double checking that we are live. Oh my God. Let's see. Okay, great. I think we're live. Okay. So let's go. Welcome to the first episode of Breach Lessons Live by CyberSafe Foundation. Drum rolls! I am super excited because our chat for today will be focused on how cyber attackers stole 759 gigabytes of sensitive data last month from a national government agency in West Africa. For some context, this agency holds the legal record of every company in the country, every director, every shareholder, every passport, every address, every board resolution that proves who owns what. And the attackers did not use a sophisticated means to achieve what they wanted to achieve. And that's why today on Breach Lessons Live, we'll walk you through how we believe this attack may have transpired. And we will translate what that means for the institutions that you and I serve. So, yes, welcome once again to Breach Lessons Live. And I am Confidence Staveley, the Executive Director of CyberSafe Foundation. And this is a new weekly show under our Resilio Africa program. And what we're going to be doing is that every week we will take one recent breach. We'll unpack what that breach actually what actually happened in that breach in plain English, and we'll strip out all the jargon and we'll translate the lessons into something you can act on inside your hospital, your school, your library, your municipal office, your cooperative, your water board, and the list is endless. This show is for the people who are trying to keep their institution running while also trying to keep it safe online. So, if that is you, you are in the right place. But we have to set three ground rules here. One is we do not name the breached organization because we are here to learn, not to embarrass anyone or any organization. And we want the lessons that apply across sectors and borders, right? The second ground rule we have is we do not name the attacker because I believe they've had enough attention and we're going to end it there, right? And the third key one is the questions you put in the comments will shape the second half of the show. So I will make sure to answer the best of them. So make sure to put your questions in the comments on X, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. So now that we have housekeeping out of the way, let's go straight to the case story at hand. So the institution at the center of today's breach is a national companies registry. That's the way I like to describe it. And most people in the country know it as the place where you go to register a business. You pay the fees, you submit the forms, and you get your registration number. Now, that description is accurate to an extent, but it's incomplete because this registry is also the authoritative legal record of every incorporated entity in that country we are talking about. In fact, when a bank does due diligence on a corporate client, they pull from this particular registry that I'm talking about today. Okay? So, I want us to really look at this incident very closely. I know most of you watching are not running a national registry, but I want you to pause for a second and ask what is the equivalent inside your institution? What is the system that if it goes wrong, every other system you run is also wrong? Think about it. Pause for a second and think about it. For a hospital, it is, for example, the patient master index. The thing that says this person is this person with this date of birth, this medical record number, for example, and this history. If that information is corrupted or that registry is corrupted, every prescription, every scan, every referral becomes unreliable. For a school, it's the student information system. The names, parents, result, transcripts are contained there. So if that is also corrupted or stolen, the qualification a student leaves with is actually in question. For a library, it is the member database tied to, say, the lending records, book lending records. For a water board, the customer register tied to billing. For a municipal office, the property and rates roll. For a cooperative, that could look like the member shareholding ledger. So you see what I'm driving at, right? We all can imagine ourselves in this incident I'm going to be sharing. And every one of you has a registry of some kind. So today's lesson is about what happens when the doors to that registry are not as locked as you assume it to be. So, on our case story for today, let's look at the timeline. On or around the 10th of April 2026, the attacker accessed the victim's agency's back office system and they spent several days inside it. They created themselves an administrator account. Imagine. They downloaded what they say is more than 25 million documents. Then they posted about it on the criminal forum with screenshots, with video recordings of the data theft, and with download links to 759 gigabytes of files that anyone anywhere could pull down. And my goodness, I am just really just processing that. I'm really just processing that because the agency's first public statement was issued 5 days after the data went live. The language was careful. They described it as an unauthorized access to limited aspects of the information systems. Now, the evidence the attacker published showed full administrative access across every portal in the back office. Whew. So, how did they get in? Let's discuss the three doors this government agency may have left open that put their registry in the hands of attackers. Okay, three doors. Let's start with the first door. An authentication service existed that asked no questions. Now, if I'm coming into your house, right, an authentication, let me break it down because I don't want to use jargon here. If I come to your house for the first time, what happens is I knock the door, but you don't open the door straight away. First of all, the door is even locked, right? So I have to knock and then you have to open the door, but you don't open the door straight away. You come and look through the pigeonhole and double check by hearing and by seeing me that I am who I say I am before you open the door for me to come in. And that is what authentication is, right? But then this affected what is called an API service. So before I begin to really discuss this authentication service, let me give you a crash course on something called APIs. Now, APIs, or for full meaning of API, is application programming interfaces, are like the wait staff of the internet. They carry the orders from the device to the kitchen where the data is prepared, and then they deliver the data right back to you. So they are fundamental to how modern software communicates. And APIs are the secret sauce that connects different systems, allowing them to share data and functionalities. But when they are poorly managed, these APIs can be a gateway to data breaches, making the entire system vulnerable to attacks like the one we're looking at today. Okay, so now we've gotten the crash course on what APIs are out of the door. Let's discuss this first door. So, this first door was the agency's API authentication for services, specifically the door that hands out session tokens that staff for staff to log into the back office, right? When you log into the back office as a staff, you get a session token. So when a staff member needs to log in, the system generates what is called a JSON web token, and for short it's called JWT. So think of it as a wristband at an event. The wristband says you have been verified, you've bought a ticket, and here is what has allowed you to enter inside. So you take it and then you get into the show. Now, there are two problems with how this door was built in this particular organization that was breached. The first problem is that the door identified the user it was generating a token for using a sequential number. And this is such a rookie mistake. So something like each user will have predictable numbers. So user 1 will have 300 as their number, user 2 will have 301, 302, 303. So you can guess that the next user is what? 304. So a predictable countable series as user ID is one of the oldest worst practices in securing APIs. The second problem is more serious than the first one I've just described. The endpoint, which is like a door, generated a valid token from that user ID alone. This is so bad. Because there are no passwords used, no second or factor authentication, no challenge of any kind. Literally, the token is generated from that user ID that is predictable. So all the attacker did was just send requests to the API, guessing one number after another using a standard security testing tool until they hit a valid user ID, and then the system handed them a wristband. Now, both of these problems I have just described, they have names. In fact, the OWASP, the Open Worldwide Application Security Project called OWASP, they publish a list of top 10 risks in API security, I think every few years. The first risk on that list, the one ranked number one, because it is the most common and one of the most dangerous and one of the most exploited, is what is called broken object level authorization. In plain English, that is when a system lets you ask for an object using the identifier. For example, like I've just given an example of 300, 301, but does not check whether you are the person allowed to ask. Remember what I said about opening a door? When you want to open a door, what do? You say, "Who is there?" And then you hear the person's voice, but you don't even stop at that. You still look through the pigeonhole, through the door, and confirm by seeing the person. And that's when you open the door. But in this case, that is not what transpires in the system. And that's where what the problem starts. The second risk is on the list is broken authentication. That is when the system gives out credentials without properly proving you are who you say you are. Literally, that's what I've been describing, right? And this breach failed both. The translation for your institution is this: I want you to look at every place where your systems use a number in a URL, that's the web address, or in an API request, maybe your patient ID, student ID, account number, member number. And then I want you to ask questions. I want you to ask two questions. One is this number predictable? Two, when the system receives the number, does it actually check that the person asking is allowed to see that record? Now, switching to a random user identification number helps with the first question, but it does not solve the second. You still need an authorization check on every request, and there is actually no shortcuts around this. Now, let's move to the second door that this agency left open. A public subdomain handed out files to anyone who knew the name. Now, this second door is even simpler than the first one. So, beyond the back office portal, the agency ran a separate document management system in the public subdomain. And this system held the actual files, the passports, the affidavits, the board resolutions, the notarized documents. And so, when we're researching this, we saw that the attacker told the journalist who reported on the breach that you could download those files directly from the subdomain without going through the website at all. So you don't need login. You don't need token. You don't need a token. You don't need credentials whatsoever. The only thing you need to know was the file name. Now, the defense the system relied on was that file names were hard to guess. And that is what we call security through obscurity. And it is not a defense at all. It's like hoping. That's not a defense. Now, the translation for your institution is this: wherever your system stores files that are meant to be private, those files must require an authenticated session, an authorization check before they are served to anyone. That is, you must check who the person trying to access these files are, and also check that they are permitted to do so and what they are permitted to do while there. Not a guessable file name, not a hard URL, an actual check that says this user on this session is allowed to retrieve this file. Now let's move to door number 3. A privilege granting the system did not blink at. So a privilege grant, the system did not blink at multiple times. It was an issue. Because the third door is the one I want everybody watching this, that's a decision maker, to remember, right? That privilege systems just giving up privileges, you know, multiple of them are not really thinking through it, or not having stops, or not having checks and balances, a problem. So the thing is, once the attacker had a valid token from the first door I described, they navigated to the staff account creation panel and created an account for themselves. Then they went to the role assignment screen and started ticking boxes. They did not assign 2 or 3 roles. They assigned 474 roles to one single user. So every functional area in the back office, every approval queue, every record portal, every administrative panel, and the system did not stop them from continuing to do that. The system did not, in fact, flag them. There was no second approval, no segregation of duties, no anomaly alerts that something is going on here, something is wrong, something is unusual. There was no review queue. I want you to look at what the translation for your institution could be. There are 3 questions for whoever runs your most important systems here. One, can a single administrator create a new account and assign that account elevated privileges and use it within the same session? If the answer is yes, that is a problem. Two, when a privilege grant happens, that you give somebody access or give somebody privileges, who is notified? If the answer is nobody or only the person who made the grant, that is a problem. Now, three, if there's a maximum number of roles, if there is a maximum of roles a single account can hold, or there is no, I mean, if there is no single, there's no maximum, there's a problem. So begin to ask yourself, is there a maximum number of roles a single account can hold? And if the answer is no, that is a problem. Because most accounts in most systems should hold a small number of roles. If somebody has 50, that is worth a conversation. So now we've spoken about this bridge, but I want us to leave with something. I want to leave with 5 things to do in your institution this week. I want you to leave this episode with a list of 5 actions that your hospital, your school, municipal, your government agency, or any other critical community institution can take in the next 7 days. Now, the first key thing is, before you secure anything, name the system in your institution that is the source of truth, the single source of truth, if possible. The patient master index, you need to find it. The student record, the member ledger, the rate roll. You need to write down what it is called, who owns it, where it runs, and who has administrative access to it. If you cannot answer these 4 questions in writing by the end of the week, then you should start now. That's your starting line. 2, you need to list your administrators. You need to pull the list of every account in that system that has high privileges, can do a lot of things basically, and cross-check it against your current staff list. Anyone who has the institution, who has left the institution and still has an account, is a finding. Anyone who has changed roles but still has access from their previous role is a finding. Anyone you do not recognize is a finding. The third key thing is, I want you to ask your vendors 3 questions in writing. If your system was built by a vendor or runs a vendor platform, send them an email today, and I want you to ask, how do users identifiers get generated in this system? Are they sequential or random? When a request comes in for a record, what authorization check happens before the record is returned? When a privilege grant is made, who is notified? If they cannot answer that question or those questions in plain English, that is your finding. And number 4, I want you to run a role review. That's once a quarter, sit with whoever runs your most important system and read the list of accounts and their roles out loud. I mean, out loud. The number of disused accounts and excessive permissions that surface in that exercise will definitely surprise you. And I said 5 things you need to do, right? So this is the 5th and maybe one of the most important. Now, number five, if your institution serves a community in Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, or South Africa, and you've been wondering where to start on any of what I've just described today in this live session, CyberSafe Foundation can help. Now, through the Resilio Africa program funded by Google.org, we are putting free cybersecurity services into the hands of 200 critical community institutions. Now, here is what the institutions in the program are getting as of today. The first key thing they're getting is a gap analysis, risk profiling, and security assessment, and support for implementing essential baseline defenses. Now, this means my team will come in, look at your systems, look at where you stand, and tell you what is missing, and then rank the risk by how likely they are to hurt your organization, and then help you put the basic safeguards in place. The second key thing that the organizations are enjoying is we will also provide three different trainings, one for the board and senior leaders. And this basically is designed to help them ask the right questions and own the risk. And then for the IT team, we focus on hands-on skills to find and close the gaps that could exist in your systems. And for everyone else, the everyday habits that keep your institution safe is what we focus on. The third key thing we are able to offer is we will conduct a tabletop exercise or tabletop exercises to simulate real world attack scenarios to improve crisis response readiness. The fourth key thing is we'll also provide an incident response playbook or incident response playbooks and technical support, customized IR toolkits and implementation assistance and ongoing technical support. Now, I just said a lot of stuff in jargon, but in plain English, I'm saying we'll give you a written plan for what to do when something goes wrong, written for your specific institution, not pulled from a template. And we help you put the plan in place and we stay on call to support you when you actually need to use it. The fifth key thing we do, and maybe one of the most exciting for me personally, is we will integrate your organization into a regional network of trusted defenders for knowledge sharing, coordination, and long term sustainability. Because we don't want to put this superpower in your hands and just leave you be, right? We could also continue to make sure that all other organizations support you as well. Now, in summary, Resilio Africa puts five things in your hands for free if your institution qualifies. We look at where you stand and help you put the basics in place. We train your board, your IT team, and your staff differently because the questions they need to answer and the things they need to be able to do are different. We walk you through a fake attack in a room where the real one finds your organization. We write a plan for the worst day built for your organization with someone on the other end of the call as well whenever required. Think about it. And then we connect you to a network of institutions like yours sharing what they're seeing so nobody fights alone. Now, to apply for everything I've just described to you, that mean applying for the Resilio Africa program, all you need to do is simply visit www.resilio.cybersafefoundation.org, www.resilio.cybersafefoundation.org. Now I'll begin to take your questions. So let me go over to YouTube and um and X and see if you have any questions there. Let's see. If you have any questions, this is a good time to pop your questions in the box. And let's begin to take your questions. So if you have any questions around this whole discussion we've had, just begin to drop your questions in the comment section and we will take them. Okay, I don't see any questions here. So does that mean we're really, really killing it? We've covered all the grounds. Does that mean we've covered all the grounds? Okay, I'm assuming we've covered all the grounds and you're just really just in awe of all what we have discussed today. I'm going over now to YouTube to double check that we don't have any questions that I have not yet addressed. Let's see. Oh, somebody says that's a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. And we just wanted to be able to cover all of that in 30 minutes so you can really learn. We spent the past 25 minutes just breaking down that particular incident and helping you really, really get to understand it. I see the excitement in the comment section. Thank you so much. Oh my God, thank you so much, Paul. It's so good to see you here. And we can't wait to get to meet you in Nairobi because there's a lot we need to discuss. And I'm so excited for your organization as well. I'm not going to get to mention the name, but I'm so excited for your organization because all of what I've described here, we're going to be able to provide it to your organization. I think we've already started. Yeah. So I'm really excited for your organization. If there are any questions, please just drop them in the chat and we'll begin to take them. Or you know what? I mean, I just assume there are no questions and we will just run. But yeah, this has been a very great time talking to you about breaches, and we're going to save you what 3 more minutes of your time and maybe close the show right now. But this has been Breach Lessons Live, and my name once again is Confidence Staveley. Breach Lessons Live is by CyberSafe Foundation under the Resilio Africa program. So I'm going to call it a day now. See you next Friday with yet another exciting session of Breach Lessons Live. Make sure to invite someone next week, Friday, because we're going to be touching on another very exciting one. So make sure to invite a friend, a colleague, someone to come on this show and learn a lot. Okay, see you next week, Friday.